On a cold city street, a little girl sat by an abandoned piano, her clothes torn, her stomach empty, her eyes filled with quiet determination. She held a piece of cardboard with shaky handwriting. "Can I play for food?" Passers-by laughed, mocked, and dismissed her as nothing more than a homeless child seeking pity. But what none of them knew was that her fingers carried a gift powerful enough to silence the crowd, melt hardened hearts, and reveal a truth that would leave everyone who doubted her absolutely stunned. The city was alive with noise, honking, horns, rushing footsteps, and the constant hum of conversations. But amid the chaos, a fragile figure often went unnoticed. Her name was Amira, a young girl barely 12, wandering the streets with her mother after they had lost their home. Life had been cruel, stripping them of stability, comfort, and dignity. Yet even as hunger gnawed at her and cold nights pressed in, Amira carried something extraordinary within her, a love for music. Back in the days before everything fell apart, she had learned to play the piano in her school's music room. It wasn't formal training, just a curious child's fascination, guided by a patient teacher who recognized her spark. Every note she touched seemed to breathe life into the keys, as though the instrument had been waiting for her. But when poverty forced her family out of their small apartment, the piano became only a memory, locked away in a past she longed to return to. Now, the only piano she had access to was one abandoned outside a closed-down music store. The paint was chipped, the keys weathered, and the sound uneven. Yet to Amira it was a lifeline. She dragged a cardboard sign with her wherever she went, scrawled with trembling letters, "Can I play for food?" Most days people ignored her. Some sneered, others laughed, assuming she was just another child pretending for sympathy. The sting of their words cut deep, but Amira refused to stop. She believed, deep down, that her music could one day open a door to something better, for her and for her mother. Day after day, Amira returned to the broken piano, her fingers trembling from cold yet steady when they touched the keys. She poured out melodies that carried fragments of hope, sorrow, and strength far beyond her years. To her, the music was a conversation with the world, a plea for someone to see her, not as a homeless child, but as a human being with a gift. But the world was rarely kind. Shoppers carrying expensive bags crossed the street to avoid her. Some tossed coins not because they believed in her, but out of pity, never staying to listen. Others mocked openly. "Play for food?" they scoffed. "What a joke. Get a real skill." Every word cut into her like a blade, but Amira kept playing. She told herself that one day, someone would stop and truly hear her. One afternoon, her worst humiliation came. A group of teenagers gathered around, laughing at the sight of the little girl with her cardboard sign. They jeered at her clothes, her hair, her shaking hands. One boy even struck a loud, discordant note on the piano, sneering, "This thing's more broken than you are." The crowd burst into laughter. Amira's face flushed, her chest tightened, but she didn't stop. Instead, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. The sound that emerged silenced the mocking for a brief moment. Her music, though flowing through a weathered instrument, carried beauty too raw to ignore. But as quickly as it came, the teens dismissed it, shrugging and walking off, muttering that she was just wasting her time. To the people passing by, it was just another street performance lost in the noise of the city. Amira's mother, watching nearby with weary eyes, wanted to protect her child from the cruelty, but she knew that the piano was the only thing keeping her daughter's spirit alive. So she let her play, even when it seemed no one cared. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped low and the crowd thickened on the busy street, Amira played again. The notes were delicate but full of fire, her hands moving as though guided by something greater than herself. For the first time in days, people actually began to slow down. A few turned their heads. A couple stopped altogether. The girl, lost in her music, didn't notice the gathering eyes. Among the crowd was a man in a long coat, carrying himself with quiet authority. He didn't laugh. He didn't walk past. He simply stood there, frozen, listening as if each note pulled at something buried deep within him. To everyone else, she was just a homeless girl with a cardboard sign. But to him, there was something far more extraordinary unfolding, a sound that didn't belong on a street corner, but on the grandest stage. Something was about to change. The crowd thickened around the old piano, the air shifting from indifference to awe. Amira, still unaware of the gathering, played as if the music itself were carrying her away from hunger, from cold nights, from the sting of mockery. Her fingers flew across chipped keys, weaving sounds so pure that people who had never noticed her before now stood completely still, captivated. The man in the long coat stepped closer, his eyes never leaving her hands. He wasn't just any passerby. He was a renowned conductor, a figure whose presence could silence entire orchestras. To him, Amira's playing wasn't random, nor was it luck. It was genius. Hidden under the grime of the streets was a child, whose music carried the depth of pain, hope, and brilliance that even trained musicians struggled to achieve. Then, something extraordinary happened. As Amira shifted into a melody she had crafted herself, the notes seemed to climb above the noise of the street. A hush fell over the entire corner. People stopped their conversations, drivers slowed at the intersection, and even the city's chaos dimmed. For a few precious moments, the world bent around her music. But not everyone was moved by wonder. A store owner stormed out, furious at the crowd blocking his entrance. He sneered at Amira, demanding she stop making noise and move along. The conductor raised a hand sharply, his voice cutting through the tension. "This is not noise. This is brilliance." The words stunned everyone. Whispers rippled through the crowd as the man revealed who he was. He explained that talent like, Amira's was not something you stumbled upon every day. It was something the world desperately needed to hear. He turned to her, his voice steady but filled with emotion. She didn't belong on a broken piano in the cold. She belonged on a stage. At that moment, the mocking voices, the jeers, the cruel laughter, all of it was drowned out. Amira finally lifted her eyes, realizing for the first time that the world had truly heard her. Her life was about to change forever. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream Amira never dared to imagine. The conductor who had stopped to listen that evening was true to his word. He arranged for her to be given a proper piano, one with polished keys and resonant tones that reflected her gift in its true form. More than that, he introduced her to people who could nurture her talent, opening doors she didn't even know existed. For the first time, Amira stepped into a concert hall. The velvet seats, the gleaming lights, the grand piano at center stage, it felt like stepping into another world. Her small frame seemed swallowed by the vastness of it all, but when she placed her hands on the keys, silence fell. And then, with the first note, the silence transformed into something greater, reverence. She played with every ounce of emotion she had carried through the years of hunger, loneliness, and ridicule. Her story was etched in every chord, the heartbreak of nights spent on cold streets, the ache of her mother's sacrifice, the cruel laughter of those who mocked her sign. But woven through all of it was hope, fierce and unyielding. The audience, a sea of strangers in elegant clothes, sat in tears as the music painted pictures words could never capture. By the time she struck the final note, the hall erupted in applause. Not polite applause, not pity, but thunderous, genuine admiration. They were not clapping for a homeless girl who had begged to play for food. They were clapping for a prodigy, a child whose music could reach into the deepest corners of the human heart. Amira's mother, seated in the wings, wept silently. She knew this moment wasn't just about music. It was about dignity restored. About a child finally being seen for who she was, not for the circumstances that tried to bury her. News of Amira's gift spread quickly. Articles were written, opportunities offered, and people who once sneered at her on the street now spoke of her with awe. But for Amira, the greatest victory wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that her persistence, her refusal to give up, had carved a path not only for her, but also for her mother. And yet, beneath the triumph, a sobering truth remained. How many other children were ignored, mocked or silenced simply because of their circumstances. How many voices, how many gifts were being lost because the world failed to look past appearances? Amira's story was more than just a personal victory. It was a mirror held up to society, asking an uncomfortable but necessary question. How often do we dismiss greatness just because it doesn't come wrapped in privilege? Because sometimes the child with the cardboard sign isn't asking for pity. Sometimes she's holding the music that could change the world.